don't swear.
Never. I'm Dave.
I'm Sean, and I can't see Dave. Hopefully I'll see him. There he is.
Welcome to Barstools
and Bandtalk.
I was told in the Catholic Church when we do that.
Yeah, I tell you, we made a promise 8 weeks ago. We said, if you want them, we'll get them. And I think we've up there into the bargain so far. And we got another one tonight who, I got to tell you, this is going to be so much fun. We put a little teaser. They put a little teaser on the site today, and it blew up. The amount of feedback, the amount of pictures, the amount of, in talking with this beautiful young lady before we came on, she got a ton of ties to the East Coast. So we're really excited about this.
So I'm so glad that you folks participated in the video teasers today, because we're bringing on Lee Aaron, and she's got a lot of stories to tell about her time in the Maritimes, her time traveling. Just what a wonderful human being and an incredible star she is. So without further ado, let's bring her on, Miss Lee Aaron. There she is.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Lee. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? Well, I mean, as great as can be expected in the middle of a pandemic. So there we go, right?
Let's hit the ground running. So what have you been doing to bide your time while you've been while all this stuff has been going on?
What have I been doing? Well, an interesting story. Right, the week that the whole COVID thing just kind of exploded, like that second week of March, the guys in the band and I were booked to play, and believe it or not, a corporate function for just under 100 people. We hardly ever do corporate functions. We're usually playing casino showrooms for hundreds of people, but it turns out they had just banned all gatherings under 250. Do you remember this?
Right.
Yeah. So we were kind of freaking out. We're like, do we get on a plane and do we fly to Calgary and do we do the show? And anyway, the buyers, they were really wanted us to come and do the show. So we went and performed that show on, I believe it was the 18th of March or something like that. And then my guitar player, Sean, was supposed to fly in, and we were going into the studio to cut bed tracks for our new album that we just finished writing a few months ago. So Sean flew back, he cut the bed tracks, but those 3 days when we were in the studio cutting beds, things were getting like it wasn't even like every week things were changing, every hour things were changing. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where they were going, this is happening, people are dying like crazy in Italy, and it was just exploding. And so the tensions were running fairly high when we were in the studio. Sean was anxious to get back on a plane and get back home to Toronto to his family because, again, like just everybody's paranoia and concern around everything was just ramping up like crazy. So we finished bed tracks for an album, and then we came back home and all our shows for the summer got canceled. And then, so what have I been doing? I've been working on the new album. So in fact, Dave Reimer was at my house, social distancing, sort of on different microphones. We were cutting background vocals yesterday. So I've been working on the new album because I've got a studio in my home as well, which enables me, thankfully, the equipment is, with digital technology, it's easy to be world-class in your house, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but we were working on tracks, taking lots of hikes with my kids. We're fortunate that we live on a fairly large property out west here, and we have access to these beautiful provincial parks, and we have a little movie theater in our house. So like we're kind of set up, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of lucky that way. But it's been tough on my children because they are 14 and 16, and that is they're teenagers. They want to see their friends. They want to hang out. I want to see my friends and hang out, right? And it's just it's not really possible to do that. Virtual hugs.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
My youngest is 15. It's the same thing. Said, Dad, why am I being punished? Why can't I see my friends? So, honey, the world's being punished. You didn't do anything wrong. It's hard for them. I mean, they all have enough anxiety in their lives right now, anyhow, at that age, and it's tough when you can't, share with your friends for sure. Listen, I want to hear about more about your maritime thing, because we talked about that a little bit before we went on. I couldn't believe the amount of people who had such strong ties to Lee Aaron, and everybody had a personal story. I couldn't believe it. Let me share one with you first.
Oh, okay. Hopefully I remember.
Brian and Sandy Norman. Brian Norman was the host tech at the Crazy Horse Cabaret.
I remember it well. Yeah.
There you go. His wife Sandy was a server there, and she had a little girl named Jamie who was quite sick, so she was in the hospital. You went to the hospital, the IWK hospital in Halifax, to visit 2 or 3 kids. One kid apparently had just been in a hit and run accident, was near dead. They hadn't moved for days. But you went in there and rubbed his leg or talked to him, and he woke up or moved or recovered from that. So you're a healer, not just a rock and roll star. You're a healer. So those stories were amazing today. So thank you very much for that.
Well, it's funny, I'd forgotten all about that. I used to go to it was the hospital in Halifax, right? Yeah. I used to go to the hospital in Halifax regularly, and there was a little guy in there who had, he was 12 or 14 years, he was a young boy, and he had gotten just an unfortunate turn of events. He lost his feet because he had a viral thing that went sideways, and yeah, so we had prosthetic feet. But every time I would come to Halifax after that, I would take him out. We'd go to Dairy Queen and hang out.
Oh, wow.
I love Dairy Queen. And he was pretty cool too. But yeah, I used to go to the Halifax hospital as often as I could and hang out and see people and see kids there. Yeah.
But your dad...
So I had the opportunity, we were talking beforehand, the opportunity to meet you. I think it was 94. Myself and actually Kevin Sonde, who used to play with you, were in a band that was opening for you. And I remember you being a sweetheart the whole weekend. But everybody that I've talked to, I have not found one person that has anything bad to say. Like, has anybody caught you on a bad day? Honest to God. I've asked a few people, and not one person has said anything bad about you.
Oh, well, you should talk to my husband. I'm sure.
Well, that doesn't deserves it. I mean, come on, right? But no, but seriously, I mean, I would, again, it's not because people have bad days. Everybody has bad days, and if you're in the business and you have some notoriety and you're visible, everybody's waiting for you to have the bad day. So
well, I put it down to my East Coast blood, my East Coast heritage, I guess. I don't know. I learned some fairly good lessons growing up. My mom passed away a couple of years ago, but she always said pretty is as pretty does, and it's just very true, and be kind, be kind, be kind. There's nothing I don't think there's anything more infectious than kindness, right? And that, it's too bad the world is so, with social media, it's almost out of control now. I mean, and it's provided a forum for people to just be assholes, right? And not have repercussions, because no one can actually call you out on it in person, because it's this virtual world. And that's why, I tend to be very cautious in posting my personal opinions about things online and stuff, because I find that the moment you do, I posted something a couple months ago after that terrible tragedy out east with the guy that shot all those people, where Trudeau passed a bill to ban assault rifles in Canada. I'm like, okay, there's nothing, whether you like Trudeau or you don't like Trudeau, he's made some mistakes, but, banning assault rifles can't be a bad thing, right? And people attacked me online for saying that, and I just think if it's not something kind and uplifting, why say it at all? Because, kindness begets kindness, and ugliness begets ugliness, right? So that's sort of my attitude.
No, and I'm glad you said asshole, because I didn't want to swear on this, but there's a bit of a theme that I've had with some people that I meet where I say it's so to actually meet somebody who I grew up listening to that isn't an asshole. And so far we've hit pretty good. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Is that your dog?
My dog alarm.
Yeah.
I have the golden retriever howl when someone knocks on my door.
So anyway, thank you very much for saying asshole before I did, because I was going to try to clean it up. So I appreciate that.
Well, that's okay. You know, I probably won't be dropping any F-bombs, but you guys are welcome to be yourselves. You know?
You're in the right place.
So, one of the things that I'll say really quickly, so just before we came on, you were telling a story about some ties to Moncton. Why don't you tell us that story again? Because that was a great story.
Oh, well, I was telling you that my dad is a Newfoundlander. And, you know, actually, you know, what is extremely disappointing about this COVID thing is that I don't know if you know about this, but every few years they have like a come home year in Newfoundland with the small towns there. And so Millertown, where he grew up as a young boy in Newfoundland, was having a come home year, and he felt it might be the last time he would get to go back there and see childhood friends. And we had sort of pseudo plans for me and my sister to maybe go out there with him, and the town had stepped up. There was a few people from city council that had actually extended personal invites for me to come and everything. It was, and then of course everything got canceled with COVID. But when my dad was, I think, 11 years old, he moved to Moncton, New Brunswick. And this was before Newfoundland was part of the Canadian Confederation. And anyway, they took up residence there. My lovely grandma, who had 11, my dad had 10 brothers and sisters. They had 11 kids. And, but she settled in Moncton and stayed there most of the rest of her life. And whenever I played Ziggy's, which was quite a notorious rock nightclub in the 80s and early 90s, she would come, and her sight was going, her hearing was going, but she would sit in the front row and just as proud as could be. And my cousins, she'd be flanked by my cousins watching the show. And then the last time that I saw her, one of the last times that I was able to see her in person before she passed, I think she was about 82 or 83. And she came backstage, and this backstage area, there was this big, long, huge flight of stairs up to this upper level where the dressing room was. And by the time she got to the top of those stairs, she was like panting. I'm like, Nan, like, I can't believe you walked up that huge flight of stairs just to come and see me. And she goes, well, no, it wasn't hard to walk up the stairs. She goes, the problem is I had a drink as big as me head. And so they had these specialty drinks that came in literally like fish bowls, right? And one of my cousins suggested that she have one. So she did. I don't know if she'd ever drank that much in her whole life, but anyway, it was quite charming.
Awesome.
God love.
So, yeah.
So, you know, you've got, and I almost apologize. I did a little bit of research today, and I never do that, but I did today. 12 recorded albums. Is that right?
No, I have more than, I don't know if you're talking about original albums. I've got a couple of best ofs as well. The album that I'm currently working on recording, which is an all original album, is my 15th.
Okay.
15th album. I know, you're making me feel old.
No, you could have served when you were 15, one a year. That makes sense. You're about 30 now. That's what you look like. That's fine. So what's the style of the new music like?
It's a rock and roll record, you know. I'm so fortunate. About 6 years ago, I started working with Sean Kelly, a guitarist from Toronto. We met because Sean had authored a book called Metal on Ice. Are you familiar with this book?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's sort of, it covers a bunch of Canadian rock history in the 80s into the early 90s that was kind of omitted from a lot of other Canadian rock history books, like suspiciously omitted. And so he covered a lot of ground. He's a fantastic writer. And we met because he interviewed me for that book. And so I think I've got like a part of a chapter or something in the book. And then he was affiliated with Coalition Music in Toronto, and the idea came to them all that wouldn't it be cool if we did a companion CD and then a big showcase show showcasing a lot of these artists that were quite influential in the Canadian hard rock scene in the 80s and early 90s.
Sure.
And so that's how we met, was through this book and through this show. But him and I hit it off so well, just as human beings. We just loved each other. He's a wonderful person, and we just had a lot of the same musical influences. We liked a lot of the same bands. We're like, you know, we should write some songs together. You should play in my band sometime. So one time I was coming to Toronto, I needed a sub guitar player because my regular guy couldn't do it. Sean subbed on the show, and it was just glaringly apparent that Sean was the guy. He should be in the Lee Aaron band.
Wow.
And so myself, John Cody, who's my husband, Dave Reimer, who's been in my band for about 15 years, we're just like, dude, you're the man. You got to be in the band. And so he joined the band at that point about 6 years ago. And then we just started writing. And we wrote Fire and Gasoline in 2016 and put that out. Diamond Baby Blues we put out in 2018. And then we just finished writing another original album, which hopefully is going to be released 2021. We're sort of going to be in the process of, I have to let my dogs out.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
They're scratching at the door. One second.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, you guys, go. Go. We know who really runs the show around here, hey? So anyway, so yeah, and to make a long story short, I just have the greatest band. I'm so lucky. John, my husband, is a musicologist. We have a record collection at my home. I should actually take my computer in there in a little bit and show you.
Yeah.
But awesome. We have like 250,000 albums, a library of 250,000 albums at our house. You want to see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll show you right now. Here, I'll show you and come back. One second.
Sure.
Are you, follow me.
Yeah. Okay, we'll follow you.
Here we
I'll
go.
put my glasses on so I can see. I'm old as hell now.
Okay, I'm turning it around. Can you see?
Yep. Holy Jesus Christ.
So,
oh my God.
This is the one side.
God.
These are CDs. CDs. And those are, again, I'm trying to get, that's snare drums and more records and books up there. And then you're getting a personal tour. This is one of my husband's drum kits. And then up there are more drum kits.
Oh.
And there's another drum kit.
What's his favorite brand of drums?
Pardon me?
What's his favorite brand of drums? My friend Sean's a drummer, so.
I don't know. I know one of his favorite kits is this Camco kit. Anyway, here's down some of the aisles. Can you see? Here's another one. Those are records and things. And then I know this is insane. This is my husband. He's the musicologist. And then that's our movie theater. And those are classic movies. I don't know. He's a hard copy guy, as you can see.
Yeah.
So it's kind of messy in here right now. But anyway, those are all movies over there.
Oh my God.
You sure he's a drummer? He's awfully organized for a drummer. Holy smokes.
There's a little bit of OCD going on here, my friends.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's pretty stupid, but yeah, here. I should take you in here.
I want your
and then down the aisles, there's like CDs. It's kind of dark back here. I should have turned the lights on, but like there are shelves and shelves and shelves of records.
This is amazing.
Anyway, but I don't know. We're getting off topic. I'm getting really off topic here.
That's what we do. I told you before, Nellie. This is what we do. All right, I want to ask you, what's your prized possession of all those albums? There's one. I know there's one, at least one.
Prized possession. Mm-hmm. That's a really, really hard question. That's a hard question. I would probably be, some of the box sets of classic films like the Hitchcock box set or of the albums. I know he's got a few like Rolling Stone collectibles that are really valuable, things like that. Honestly, it's just stuff, right? But it's his passion. So to make a long story short, he's a musicologist and he's an amazing arranger. My bass player, Dave, is a great singer, great songwriter. Sean's a great songwriter and a great singer. And I'm a songwriter and a singer. So we just have this combination of, we've got 3 great songwriters in the band, 4 great arrangers. And so it just makes for this combination where we're just constantly being creative. So I just feel like I'm having a creative, new creative episode in my life, if that makes any sense. I'm having more fun writing and recording now than I have in years. So
that's awesome. That's
amazing. And I mean, as you were going through that, I was thinking it was our version of MTV Cribs. That was fantastic.
I should have turned on more lights for you guys. Sorry, it was kind of dark in there, but yeah.
Oh, good. You said your husband's name's John, right?
Yeah.
So the email address that your person sent to us, I'm going to forward you an email because we have an interview coming up. I don't want to do the big reveal now, but I'm going to send it to you so you can tell John who it is and then tell him to tune in. It's going to be a good one, and he's going to love it because he's a drummer.
Oh, okay, amazing.
Third thing, Kevin, my buddy Kevin, played me some of the stuff that you guys did over in Germany, and you were singing the absolute crap out of a Deep Purple tune. You know what song I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
You released that, did you not?
I'm sorry?
So you're going to release that, or you did release that, did you not?
Oh, it is released.
Okay.
Mistreated, the song you're talking about, is we covered that on the Diamond Baby Blues album. And then the thing that he played you is he's on all that entire recording was the Power Soul Rock and Roll Live in Germany. So last year, we put out a live CD DVD companion set, which were a combination of two concerts that were recorded when we were in Germany in 2017. So it was the Bang Your Head Festival and club, I think it was the Hirsch Club in Nuremberg. They were both recorded professionally and videoed professionally. And and then Frank Greiner, our buddy from the Toronto area. Frank you might know his name because he mixed and engineered a bunch of Nine Inch Nails stuff in the 90s. He's just recently done videos for Alice Cooper and Def Leppard, and he's incredibly talented. He authored that entire project for us as well. So
Kevin showed me that he and I were playing at a bar in St. John, New Brunswick, and it was on a Saturday. He goes, "Oh, I've got to show you something." And like we had a few drinks the night before, and I was just like, "Wow, it very well done." And that was 2 years ago. And Coverdale's not an easy guy to cover, guy or girl, and the version of that was just amazing. So good job.
Maybe we should tell David Coverdale that Lee Aaron's not easy to cover either. I'm just saying.
Well, we know that. And I tell you, Lee, our biggest, Dave and I kind of rehearsed a little bit because our biggest fear is like it was going to be the Saturday Night Live skit of Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney. Do you ever see that skit?
I'm not sure that I have. Is he?
Go look it up, and then it'll make sense to you. It's absolutely hilarious, and we didn't want to do that, so we rehearsed ahead of time. But go look at it. Yeah, it's funny.
If you've ever seen interviews, I'm pretty casual. So
yeah. Well, and I'm getting that, and it's I mean to do the tour of your house that's great because some people, we get local people who it's painful sometimes, right? So this is awesome. And
good. I'm glad.
It's great. This isn't hopefully we're not asking the same question you've been asked 8,000 times. We're just kind of sitting here chatting, and we're getting some interesting stuff. So it's great.
Okay. The question I have been asked 8,000 times is, what's it like to be a woman in rock?
Oh, actually, that was the next one on my list. No, I'm just kidding. No, I wouldn't do that because, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, and we had Darby Mills on the show.
I saw that. That was great. Yeah, she's awesome.
You two kind of forget about male, female. I mean, I've seen you play a bunch of times. You hold your own every time you play. And you went back and you did jazz. I mean, how many quote unquote rock singers can pull that off, right?
I don't know. I find it easy. I still love that genre of music as well. So yeah, but thanks. That's awesome.
That was my next question.
Where did you see me play jazz?
I saw some video.
Okay.
That you were doing it, and I went on YouTube and I saw it, and I was like, wow. I can't say I was surprised because I've seen you a bunch of times and never heard you lose your voice. But again, jazz isn't easy. It seems for the rock person, it seems to be that kryptonite that you don't want to tackle sometimes, right?
You did some acting too, did you not?
No, a little bit. Back in the 80s, there were a couple of TV shows that I did a little guest star thing in. And then I guess it was 2002, I was approached by a Baroque opera writer out west here. And he had written a 12-tone Baroque opera. And he had asked me to audition for it. And I thought, what the heck? I don't know. I've never done an opera before. It might be interesting. And I auditioned and I was cast. It was a cast of 12 individuals, actors, and singers playing 65 different roles. And it was 4 hours long. And after I got cast, I almost immediately regretted it, because when the score showed up at my house, it was like a Bible. And I was like, oh crap, yeah, how am I going to learn this? So I basically sat down with a keyboard tuned down a half step, because I was singing these intricate harmony parts with an ensemble, and I had to learn all these parts. And what can I say? It was a challenge. It was fun. It was fun to do. It was challenging. I'm glad I did it. I proved to myself I could do it. I don't have a great interest in pursuing more opera, though.
Yeah.
So, there. Yeah.
But you did it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
right?
It was fun.
How many people can say that they've done? So one of the things too that we talk about the East Coast connections and stuff. So there was a bar out here, it was a little before mine and Dave's time, but everybody talks about seeing you play at, called the Network Lounge in Halifax. Do you remember playing there?
The Network Lounge.
Yeah.
In Halifax.
Yeah, I've been there before. It was off Spring Garden Road in Halifax, which is one of the main drags.
How long ago are we talking about?
84.
85 maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if you would have been playing Network back then.
It sounds. I remember a place called Lucifer's.
Yep.
Yeah, which was Crazy Horse. Yep.
I remember the Misty Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I remember the Crazy Horse.
Yep.
In Dartmouth.
Yep.
Yep.
The Network Lounge. I probably played there. I don't know. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So
there was a video shown today at Sackville, at We Are Rocking event in Sackville. That was 2011.
I'm sorry?
It was called the We Are Rocking event. It was a baseball field out in Sackville. 2011. There's some video.
Oh, the We Are Rocking.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic festival. I loved that festival. It's not happening anymore though, is it?
I think it was, the funding dried up for it. They had a lot of big Canadian. It was always Canadian. It had a Canadian. I mean, Kim Mitchell had been their trooper. I mean, yourself. Been tons of people. Had Best Tiger. So many. April Wine. And so many have played. But yeah, I think, and they always seem to be well attended. I'm not sure what happened with the funding. I'm going to dig into it a little bit more this year to find out if we can't maybe revise something like that, because
I seem to recall asking my agent about it, because and then I played something not too long ago. Oh, what was it? It was probably about 7 years ago, and it was a Jeepers. No, it was near. I can't remember the name of the venue, but it was under a giant tent, and it was a outdoor event. Anyway, unfortunately, these days, with a lot of the club shows not paying well or drying up, it's the thing that brings bands like myself out that way these days are festivals and larger casino shows. I played the Casino Nova Scotia at one point a few years ago as well, and that was a great experience. I mean, what can I say? I love the East Coast. I have asked my agent repeatedly. I told him 2 years ago, I was just like, I don't even care if the money's not that good. Isn't there any place to play out there? But a lot of it's finances, right? For getting a band to come from Vancouver all the way out there. It sometimes is the difference of a few $1,000s in airfare, right? To get us out there, and which is unfortunately a little bit impairing. And I love the East Coast. I miss the East Coast people. I miss Kevin. I'm watching his Facebook stuff all the time. He's such a sweetheart. We loved having him in the band. He's such a great player and wonderful human being. Anyway.
Roy Mumbercat, good to say hello too. Roy Mumbercat was a light tech out here, and he worked with you for a lot of years too. I don't know if you remember the Roy Mumbercat.
I'm sorry, his name?
Roy Mumbercat was a lighting tech, worked out here for a number of years. He worked with you for a few years too. He said, "Say hi for me, say hi for me." Anyhow.
Hello.
But it's hard because we're geographically cursed as well. I mean, you're right. There's 4,000 miles away from where you are, or 7,500 miles. Sorry, 7,500 miles from Vancouver to here. So to try to piece a tour together, and we had the same conversation with Darby. She'd love to come back. A lot of people would love to come back, but it's just, how do you piece it together? There's not enough gigs in Ontario to make it through Quebec, to get to the Maritimes. It's hard to do it, right, for the money. We get it. We understand.
Well, touring Canada has always been hard. never. So after my kids were born, I don't tour the same way that I used to. I go out and if we get say we get an anchor date, like We're Rockin', something like that, like a big festival that actually pays our expenses to get there and perform, then we might try to tag on a show in Quebec and a show in Toronto or something like that. But it usually takes an anchor date. The idea of doing smaller venues all the way across Canada, it doesn't really make sense for me anymore. It takes me away from my family unless it's either financially lucrative or, my idea, and you understand having a family, right? I want to go and I want to play with, for the most people, the maximum impact, right?
Yeah.
And reach the most people that I can in one or two or three shows and come back home. And so we call it weekend warrior work, right?
Well, that's really all that's left, really, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the scene is like out west, but that's kind of what you get here. You can't play 6 or 7 nights in a row like you used to here. When we were in the 80s, when Sean and I were playing, well, yourself and you were playing, those days don't exist anymore.
Oh, you used to go and play one venue for 6 nights.
Yep. Yeah.
2 or 3 sets, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah,
Right.
that's been the theme of this. So I mean, we talked about the day, 6, 7 nights a week, and now you're lucky if you get 2. And here in Halifax, we're still hanging on to the cabaret thing. Like, we still play till 3:30 in the morning, but it's only 3 nights now. It's not 7 or 8, right? So.
Oh, so like just a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, something like that.
Yeah, and then some of them are trying to bring the dreaded matinee, which you and I know that's a pile of fun on a Saturday afternoon, right?
It's like, yeah, not. Everybody's voice works so well at noon, right? So.
Yeah.
So, no, I miss the East Coast. I miss so many things about it. And I'm really, really hoping that we get back to play there soon. But in the meantime, we're going to keep making music. What about radio out there? Like, what is there for? I remember there used to be, is Q10, it's a Q107. Well, Q104 in Halifax still happening?
Still the home of rock and roll, Q104. But it's, I don't know, like it's still a rock station. I mean, there's been a lot of changes in the way that the stations were here. They were one time all individually owned, and there's a group came in and bought them all. They were all kind of cookie cutters a little bit. Now they're all trying to find their own niche, if you will. But there's a lot more radio stations than there's been. There's some underground stuff. There's some more jazz. There's 4 or 5 or 6 country stations, but I don't know how many people are listening to radio in their cars anymore. A lot of them are doing podcasts now. A lot of them are just listening to their music from their phones. So you can skip through the ads that way, I guess, right? So, what about yourself, Wes? Is radio still big out there? Or are they still sponsoring big?
Not really. In fact, their Q107 is still out here. Or no, I'm sorry, that's Toronto. I'm thinking of it's Rock 95 or something like that. But it's the radio is so controlled by program directors now in terms of content. You're better off either making your own playlist or trying to get added to Spotify playlists these days. Yeah, it's a totally different landscape. I mean, I miss the old days, don't you guys? With records,
yeah, absolutely.
The DJs having the power to play who they want, and it's tough because digital technology makes it easier and cheaper to make world-class recordings.
Sure.
There's with YouTube, it's like anybody and everybody can be a rock star, and now with the COVID thing and Facebook Live, it's like everybody thinks everybody wants to see them on Facebook Live. TV show, and I'm just like, and when this first happened, like we talked about trying to do something as a band, and we were like, okay, but what we realized, number one, it's not as easy as just jumping on Zoom and you all playing your instruments together. There's quite a bit of lag time, as you know. So it's not possible to actually create and record music that way. So we've done a couple of these things where we each record in our own home, our part, and then we got a guy that puts it together and he pieces the video together, and we can release like one song of us playing at home. So it is actually a genuine home performance. We're just not all in the same room playing at the same time.
Yep.
And then we have to have somebody piece it together. So it's a little more complex than you think. To actually do a Facebook Live performance, you do need to be in the same room together and go through an audio interface and go into your computer. And so I did one of those. We talked about doing one earlier, but when I saw the, again, the saturation of everybody and anybody getting at a guitar and doing these Facebook things, I'm like, okay, you're not really anybody special if you do this unless you're part of a show or a program. So a place where I grew up as a teenager outside Brampton had a program through, it's called the Rose Live. It was the Rose Theater, and I had performed there before. Plus I have roots, my high school was in Brampton. I grew up there as a teenager, and they wanted Brampton artists to do this. So I agreed to be part of that. So I did this Facebook thing, but yeah, it's a little bit wild now with the internet. It's like the Wild West, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like we rehearsed this because there was a thought that I had in my head as you were saying. So, you know, you go on YouTube now, you get 5 and 6 year olds that are playing Eruption by Eddie Van Halen, and you get everybody's a virtuoso because they can learn, and the learning a lot different than it used to be. And I don't want you to name names, but often if you're hearing some of the stuff that's coming out now, are you going like, how the heck did that person actually, you know, get to where they are? Because I mean, with auto-tune and all this, as a singer who's had obviously the success you've had, does it drive you nuts sometimes when you hear some of the stuff that's out there?
Yeah.
Yep.
I find some of it unlistenable. Yeah, like the pitch correction features and things like that. You know, it's funny because my son, who's 14, he's a huge Green Day fan. And I remember Green Day from the 90s and liked them. And their new album, as much as I think Billy Joe Armstrong is a monster talent, I'm listening to this album that he's got and I'm like going, like it just sounds like it's squished and it's mixed in a compressed fashion for a tiny little speaker, which is what most people are listening to nowadays. And he doesn't need pitch correction, but it's on everything. And it's hard. In fact, that's one of the things that we're going through as a band right now. We're almost finished recording all the tracks for the new album. And we have been interviewing and talking to different mixers because we want somebody to mix the record who is going to give it an old school spin. We want it to sound like an album from the 70s.
Right on.
Without a bunch of stuff. So we've been talking to guys like Al Sutton, who did Greta Van Fleet. We've been talking to Eddie Kramer, who is like the man, you know. And we sort of, I think, we're not sure what we're going to do. I think we're going to have each of those guys mix like one song and then just see who's got the magic formula.
Mix up.
Right? You know, because, you know, it's good to have some of those tricks because, for instance, if Sean is recording his guitar track in Toronto and he's not quite got the tone he likes, we can bring it out here and my engineer can reamp it with a Kemper and get it to sound like any number of, like a British high water. He can get it to sound like any number of amplifiers that he might want to choose from, which is wonderful, without sounding completely artificial. But again, it's a lot of that stuff that they're doing. I know that there was, what was it? One of the you know, the live at home things that they did. And it was a variety of artists. And I remember when Jennifer Lopez went on, I was like, that woman can sing. Why? It sounded so artificial. I'm sorry. And it's like, not that I'm a big J-Lo fan, but I do happen to know that the woman can sing. And she had so much schmang on her voice. It was like, why? Like, it was such a put off because it's supposed to be artists from their home. And it couldn't have been more fake, you know? And it just, I don't think that's, to be honest with you, I don't think that's what people want to see. I think people want a genuine experience, right?
When you were showing me the walls and walls and walls of record albums, my heart skipped a beat. It's like, oh, I missed the sound. I missed the sound of the analog. I miss all that stuff because it was real. It was authentic. You know, there's blood, sweat, and tears went into making that album on the tape and then pressing the album. It was something you held in your hand you're proud of. not freaking pick up your phone and it costs you 2 cents, you know what I mean, to get a whole catalog of Beatles albums. It just doesn't make sense to me that you can do that. And it's not authentic anymore. It's just bullshit. You know what I mean? And I love that album room. That was wicked. I love that. Thanks so much for showing me that. That was cool.
Well, that's my 14-year-old is now, we got him a little Victrola, like suitcase record player, because I had one when I was his age, right? And it was like, that was like the bane of my existence when I played Heart, Dreamboat Annie, and Led Zeppelin 2 on that.
Yeah.
Like I wore them out. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, like that album. And Pink Floyd, The Wall, I like wore them out on that record player. And that's his thing now. I'm like, oh my gosh. My child is now starting to collect vinyl. What am I going to do?
Well, they're making vinyl now again. Can you do that with your new album? Could you not make it press it on vinyl?
We could. I'll tell you the deal with vinyl and why we haven't put it out on any of our albums out on vinyl yet is, for the most part, I have done licensing deals with labels that have paid for manufacturing. So convincing a label to do manufacturing on vinyl, they're very expensive to manufacture, number one. Number two, they're very expensive to ship as well. So people are buying them via Amazon or even say off my website. And as well, like I always laugh when my husband orders vinyl, he gets a record that could fit through a mail slot, but it's packed in a box this thick, full of foam pellets. It's cost however much to send. And that's because anybody could say their vinyl arrived damaged, right? And if your customers do that, so there's a bit of a risk that you take with pressing vinyl. You're better off pressing it and selling it off a table at your live show than trying to ship them. So yeah. But yes, that is on the agenda because I have so many people that request vinyl. And then you got to do a pressing that's a large enough run that makes it worthwhile, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, I do have, I have an inventory room downstairs with hundreds and hundreds of varieties of CDs and T-shirts and various things, which are in my home. But yeah, it's vinyl's a whole nother thing.
So, Miss Lee Aaron, we promised your guy 45 minutes. We're coming up on 45 minutes. So
okay.
We don't infringe or overstep. So I guess two things. One, when we stop recording, just tell Dave and I how we can tag you on this one when we load it. But I would just like to, the question I have, and I asked Kevin, and I don't remember what he told me. How long ago did you move to Vancouver, and what was the reason for the move? Because you were in Toronto forever, and obviously you're from the area, right?
After well, it's a little bit of a complex story. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. I had had my bigger years, 89, 91. Those were my real big albums in Canada. And then I made another best of, again in 92, I believe, came out. At that point, Attic Records went through they got bought out by Polygram. And then Polygram got merged with another company. They became Oasis. They got bought out by Songcore. And then Songcore decided that they were going to eliminate all of their distributed labels, because by that point I had negotiated with Attic Records to be a distributed label through, it was actually, they had merged with A&M in Polydor. I had made my own record label. It was Hip Chick Music, and I was distributed through A&M because I started to realize that as long as I was a direct signing, I was never going to make any money off a record royalty. That's just the nature of the industry in the 80s. And so when they finally became Songcore decided they were going to drop all of their distributed labels and just focused on direct signings. So I negotiated to get off the label rather than be dropped off the label, and to form another label. And I put out an album in 94, which was the Emotional Rain record. And the problem is grunge by that point had fully blossomed. And I sold, I don't know, it didn't sell poorly, I think might have sold 40,000 albums, but it was a fraction of what I was used to selling in Canada. And it was just a tough go. And unfortunately, being a name that was associated with the hard rock genre of the 80s and big hair music of the 80s, it was just like banging your head against the wall to get airplay. And people were just like, the media was like, nope, that's Lee Aaron, the metal queen. We don't believe that she can be anything beyond what she is. And that's the old school, we're with the new school. And I was just very frustrated. I felt like they were looking at me very myopically, and pigeonholing me, and I was stereotyped to be in this little box. And I was just kind of sick of that. And I realized that the Toronto industry was only ever going to look at me a certain way. Right. And I needed to make some changes. And by that point, I had made friends with and recorded with the members from a Vancouver group called the Sons of Freedom. And we loved working together. And they said, hey, if you ever want to make another independent album, just come out west and we'll write something. And so I sold everything, and I packed up everything in '95, and I moved out to Vancouver to make another record. And I did, and I made another record under the nom de plume Too Precious, which flopped. But I have to say, artistically, it's probably one of my favorite records that I ever made. Right. You know, I wasn't motivated by money. I was motivated by the art. And again, artistically, I think that was a great record, and I'm still very proud of it. And then, but yeah, I took a year off to lick my wounds, and then I reemerged in the late 90s singing jazz, and I did jazz for a good 5 years. Then I made a couple jazz records, and I toured doing jazz, and I played a bunch of jazz festivals, including Harbourfront. I actually toured all the way across Canada, and all the way, I think I finished the tour in Cape Breton, actually, believe it or not, and doing jazz. And yeah, but that was what motivated my move. I was just sort of sick of being defined as one thing. Yeah. So I moved out west, and I felt like it artistically freed me up to do some things, even if a couple of those things were failure. And that is actually during that period of time when I did the opera as well. So
listen, you know what? I don't think it's fair to say the word failure. You know, Leon, I don't even think that's fair, because you just said it right there. You didn't do it for the money. You wanted to examine the art of who you could be, your creative environment, and get it out there. And who gives a rat's ass? You did it. So failure would be damned. It's like you did it and most didn't. So good on you.
Well, I think I joke around when I say the word failure. I think I have a very good attitude about failure. I don't really look at failure like something that to be avoided. I dive headlong into things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But you don't know unless you try, exactly. Right? Yeah. And I look at those things as real growth periods in my life that I'm really proud of. I think they've brought me to a new place, and so I joke around, really. I use it flippantly when I say the word failure. They were really some of my favorite experiences. Well, yeah. And I encourage my kids to do the same. You never know till you try. Don't be afraid to step out on a limb and do something crazy. It's interesting because when we were doing the Fire and Gasoline record, we were doing that was our my first foray back into rock after like a 14-year hiatus. And no, not 14, 12-year hiatus. And we were doing it on a shoestring budget, and we didn't really have any money. And we're like, we got to do a video. And Sean had flown out to do something. And I'm like, hey, let's just set up the iPad in the music room and just film ourselves with playing along to the song, to Fire and Gasoline. It was the song. So if you look online to, this story is leading to a logical conclusion, but if you go online to YouTube and you look at the Fire and Gasoline video, that video was shot on my iPad and edited by me in a program that I found online. And it would cost us zippity doodah to do it. It was just us playing in the music room. So all the shaky shots were Dave Reimer coming in and trying to film me and Sean while Sean was soloing. And I put the video together. I edited it myself. And it is one of our videos that has gotten like literally more views than any other video. And I'm like, I don't know anything about video editing, but hey, I figured what the heck, Give it a try,
Yeah,
right?
We need to sign her up to the editing department.
exactly.
So that was like something I expected to be a failure, which was not. So there you
Yeah.
go, right?
Well, so I want to thank you so much. This is great, and we promised that we would be respectful, and we have, and hopefully we didn't ask you the same questions you've been asked 8 million times.
No, this was super fun, guys.
So we
I
can ask you to come back then. That's fair. Since we
have
kept our,
bugs.
I just, it's like I have to give some away. We will
I
do
love
that.
that mug. How do I get one of those?
I will send it to you.
You're going to mail it to me?
I will.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I will get my guy to get in touch with you, and he'll give you all my social handles, okay? So you can tag me on Instagram and
That'd be
Facebook, and let me know when this comes out so I can spread it out to my people, and I'll get it on the address for you, and you guys can send me your mug because I have to have one of those. That's awesome.
We're going to get it. Again, like I always say, thank you for being a nice person and not being a complete nutter. You know what? But you said it first, so appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. It was great talking to you guys.
And tell your husband I'm gonna send the email who's coming on, but he's got to keep it quiet because we were sworn to secrecy.
Okay. Sounds awesome.
It may look like we're gone, Lee, but we're not really gone, okay? So thanks so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Sounds great. I'll hang in.
All right, peace out.